Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's talk about the relations of the first part of the duodenum. We are going to talk about its visceral relations. यानी कि आपका जो duodenum का ये वाला part है वो कौन से neighboring viscera से related है. So this that you can see here is the first part of the duodenum, which is related anteriorly to the quadrate lobe of the liver and the fossa for the gallbladder, in which the gallbladder is embedded. And posterior to it, we've got this bile duct, the gastroduodenal artery, a branch of the common hepatic artery, which is a branch of the celiac trunk, and the portal vein. Okay, so we have kind of the portal triad behind the first part of the duodenum. Anteriorly, we've got the liver and the gallbladder, and superiorly, we've got the epiploic foramen, and inferiorly, we've got the head and the neck of the pancreas. ठीक हो गया? ये हो गया हमारे पास the relations of the first part. Let's also see the relations of the first part from this diagram, in which you can see the first part of the duodenum, and the posterior relations include the hepatic artery and the gastroduodenal artery, ठीक है, the portal vein, ठीक है, and the bile duct. Let's talk about the relations of the second part of the duodenum. The second part of the duodenum is this one. It is related anteriorly to the right lobe of the liver. It is also related anteriorly to the transverse colon and to the transverse mesocolon and to the loop of the small intestines. So these are the structures that are actually anterior to it, and it is actually posterior to it. इसके आगे क्या है? The transverse colon, the transverse mesocolon, the coil of intestines and इसके अलावा एक चीज़ है that is called as the root of the transverse mesocolon, and also includes the right lobe of the liver. ठीक है, so the right lobe of the liver, the transverse colon, the transverse mesocolon, and the loop of the small intestines, ठीक है, these are among the anterior relations of the second part of the duodenum. Let's talk about the posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum. Posteriorly, the second part of the duodenum is related to the anterior surface of the medial end of the right kidney. It is also related to the right source. It is related to the renal vessels that are emerging from the hilum of the right kidney, and it is related to the medial end of the inferior vena cava. Again, note that aorta is not among the posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum. The posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum only include the kidney and not the ureter. ठीक है, it includes the renal vessels, which is both the artery and the vein, the right source major, and the medial end of the inferior vena cava. Among the medial relations of the second part of the duodenum, that includes the head of the pancreas that is embedded in the second part of the duodenum. Lateral to the second part of the duodenum, we have got this right colic flexure, also called as the hepatic flexure. Now let's talk about the relations of the third part of the duodenum. The relations of the third part of the duodenum include anteriorly the root of the mesentery and the superior mesenteric vessels, which include the superior mesenteric artery and the superior mesenteric vein. Among the posterior relations of the horizontal part of the duodenum, or the third part of the duodenum, we have the ureter, the right ureter, and the right source major. If you remember, among the posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum, we had the medial end of the right kidney and we did not have the ureter. But now we have the ureter. The right source was also among the posterior relations of the second part of the duodenum. The relations of the third part of the duodenum also include the right testicular artery, the right testicular or the ovarian vessel, the inferior vena cava, and the abdominal aorta with the origin of the inferior mesenteric artery. So we have got 5 relations: the ureter, the right source, the testicular or the ovarian vessel, the inferior vena cava, and the aorta with the origin of the inferior mesenteric artery. Among the superior relations of the third part of the duodenum, as we know that the head of the pancreas is embedded in the second part of the duodenum, so The third part of the duodenum is superiorly related to the head of the pancreas and the uncinate process, and inferiorly it is related to the coils of the jejunum, as the coils of the jejunum are going to emerge from the duodenojejunal flexure and are going to collect inferiorly. Now let's talk about the relations of the fourth part. First, let's talk posteriorly. Posteriorly, this that you can see here is the fourth part of the duodenum, which is related posteriorly to the left sympathetic chain. It is related to the left renal artery, to the left gonadal artery, and it is also related to the inferior mesenteric vein, which is joining the splenic vein. So what are the posterior relations of the fourth part of the duodenum? That includes the sympathetic chain, the inferior mesenteric vein. It includes the renal artery and the left gonadal artery. Anteriorly, it is related to the transverse colon, the transverse mesocolon, the lesser sac, and the stomach. You need to remember that the transverse mesocolon, was among the posterior relations of the first part of the duodenum. But here, in the fourth part of the duodenum, that is considered to be among the anterior relations. To the right side of the fourth part of the duodenum, like in this picture that you see here, this is the fourth part of the duodenum. The right side, we've got the attachment of the root of the mesentery. And to the left side of the fourth part of the duodenum, we'll definitely be having the left kidney. And we'll also be having the left ureter. Superiorly, the fourth part of the duodenum is related to the body of the pancreas. So, since third part was related to the uncinate process, the fourth part should be related to the body of the pancreas. So, I hope all the relations of the four parts of the duodenum have been cleared.